Hi everyone, welcome back. I thought I will do something new today. I'm going to talk about my process for reading a conference call, how I read the call, what I look for in the call, and I'm going to take as an example a recent company that did its first ever conference call called Moltech Technologies. As a disclaimer, I also want to point out that I am invested in the company. I'm definitely very interested in the company, and I can at any point sell if I in my deep dive figure out that it's not worth investing into. But it's also worth noting down that I am not a SEBI registered advisor, and anything that I discuss here should not be seen as a buy or sell recommendation. This is only to share my process for how I read conference calls and for nothing else. I'm using this as an example because this is the company that is interesting and exciting to me right now, and I'm finding the highest motivation of doing it, right? So with that, let's present the screen and start the process. So I guess the most important pre-work to be done for such a first ever conference call reading is to understand what the company does. I have found that for that, Screener Wiki is probably the best place to start because that's where you can get a very crisp and high density summary of what the company does. So Moltech Technologies is providing civil and mechanical engineering services, right? It is part of the Moltech group. So if any of you have seen Moltech packaging, they make those plastic vessels or buckets for Asian Paint. That is the group here. Very good corporate governance track record, very good track record of growth, very good track record of being minority shareholder friendly, right? Um, Now, what you can see is that they are primarily into the business of mechanical and civil engineering services, and they specialize in designing and detailing structural steel, miscellaneous metals, BIM services, in-house connection design, pre-engineered metal buildings design, and detailing services for steel fabricator, architects, and general contractor, right? That's a mouthful, but I guess I'm going to just take as an example, something and like share with you how you can understand it. So one other thing which I saw here is detailing services for steel fabricator, right? I didn't quite understand what this means because detailing looks like such a weird thing. So what I did is I went to Bard and I just said what is steel detailing services for steel fabricators. This is something which Moltech Technologies does. So with these kind of large language models, it's always beneficial to give some context. That is where their answers would be most accurate. So, unlike search engines where if you put more words, it might not give a good answer. With LLMs, more words actually helps. Steel detailing services are the process of creating detailed drawings and plans for steel fabricators and erectors. Interpreting the architectural and structural engineering drawings to gain a thorough working knowledge of the overall design intent. The detailer will use the information to create drawings that show the exact dimensions, shape, material, and the drawings are used by fabricators to manufacture the steel components and by the erectors to assemble the structure. You can think of it like if you want to build out a steel structure, you obviously need to first have a abstract representation of it, accurate abstract representation, so that the fabricator can fabricate it and the erector can erect it. So all of that designing and drawing is obviously what Moltech does, right? So similar to that, you can actually understand anything from here by just barding it. Um, but let's go on to the main thing, which is the Concall notes. So I want to first talk about all the different segments which I want to segment the Concall into. So I'm going to just write down these. Right? So I think all of these are sort of self-explanatory, but essentially the reason something like business details is important is that These can be the granular details of the business, which you can't otherwise sort of categorize into, growth, profitability. They are just details of the business. Now it's important to understand the details because sometimes they are very intricately tied to the rest of the, division of the analysis. For example, growth, profitability, strategic intent. So okay, so growth is obvious. How will the company grow? Profitability, how will the company become more profitable? Strategic intent is where I try to capture what exactly is the management doing to increase the terminal value of the company. How are they trying to ensure that the company will be around after 5, 10, 20 years, that kind of thing. And generally, what is the strategy of the management, right? Like everyone has to think of a strategy in order to gain market share, grow, become larger. So then there's competitive advantages and intensity. So I want to capture both the aspect of what are the reasons that this profit pool will remain how it is, right? That's the competitive advantage, and equally also the intensity and sort of the, intensity. Competitive intensity means that who are the competitors, what are they doing, that kind of thing. And of course, risks is important to understand, like what can go wrong with the business, right? All of that. So we can add some other headers also later on, but let's just start reading the concall. Okay. So the initial part is more fluff. Let's skip over that and go to the important part. So J. Lakshman Rao sir is going to give the opening remarks. Typically, I will just skip over the metrics part of it because those we can anyway find on screener. And let's start reading from here. So what you'll see in the first paragraph is that he's talking about the details of the business. The fact that in the first quarter, typically the order flow process will start, and that is when they are initiating the orders, and then it will pick pace from April onwards, and around July it will sort of pick pace, and then basically that is where they will start the incremental progressive invoicing and delivery. So that's why he said that Q1 tends to be the starting of the season, but Q2 to Q4 in the financial year, Indian financial years, where the invoicing and the revenue numbers will improve. All of these are important business details to understand the cyclicality of the business or seasonality of the business actually. Let's put it here. Right? Okay. So immediately what you see here is that they have this mechanical engineering services, and the revenue in this part of the business has shot up from $200K to $1.1 million, right? That's 4.5x. And he's also said this is because they have entered into press tools, designing and drafting services, right? And then there are some pilot projects going on with a couple of clients, and these can also emerge as a new segment and stream of revenue. So all of this is very useful information to document under the growth header. Now, typically in the growth header, what we want to put is drivers of existing growth, what has happened in the past, and sort of sustainability of those drivers for the future, and also if there are any new drivers for the growth in the future. Right? So there are two things here that he has talked about. One is the MES scale up, and then he's talked about pilot projects with new clients. Right? Okay. And then he says that even on the civil side, they have a strong order book, and from Q2 onwards, numbers will further improve, is what they are sort of baking in. So here he has talked about a very important aspect of it, which is, the strategic intent of the company. The fact that they want to do an acquisition and they're looking at a few options, but it's primarily for getting the capabilities and sort of, going into structural designing and architectural services, right? So let's quickly add this. This is an important part to add in strategic intent. Inorganic acquisition for capabilities. Right? And he has talked about the rationale of it. He wants to, move into structural design and architectural services and basically have much better value add. Right. So now probably the Q&A part is starting. I guess the first question from Devesh is around the TAM, or the total addressable market, or basically the opportunity size, right? Now the interesting thing in the answer is that he's saying that the outlook is good for the next 2 to 3 years, right? And that's primarily because they have established themselves as a player in BIW services for tier 1 clients, and now the client base is increasing. And he has also said that, in any kind of engineering, especially like civil in this case, it takes 5 to 8 years for a company to establish its credentials, set up systems, showcase or exemplary or reference projects that will be seen by the clients to give you bigger projects. So I guess this also, ties into the previous video I had made, which is that capability is at the heart of both growth and moats, right? That's capability. That's what they're talking about here. Um, so let's take all of this, and I guess the first one can go in growth, and the second one should grow in competitive advantages. Guidance, and then this one is talking about the learning curve and the fact that, like, immediately when you read something like this, what should come to your mind is that, a random company cannot compete with them, right? Because of the learning curve. And you can call it the capability and references establishment phase, or sort of um, the phase where you are sort of gestating the business, right? So the gestation period is fairly high, 5 to 8 years. So today in Moltec in civil has already reached that couple of years ago, right? That is what he's talking about. So the fact that they were able to reach here 2 years ago, right? So this is what, like, for a new competitor, it would be difficult to do that, and that's the barrier to entry for the competitor. Now he has talked about the fact that this civil work is well established in United States, and you can reference it in, you can look at it through the reference projects that they have done in a lot of different cities. For example, there's an Amazon warehouse and a 64-storied building in Chicago. These are some of the reference projects that they have done. Reference projects, right? Because what they were talking about, you need references, you need that capability, and also, sort of clients need to see that you have already done projects. So it's like that whole thing that in every job application, if they say we want people with 5 years experience, then you can never hire a fresher, right? It's something similar. So here he's talking about the fact that, over the last 10 years, they have built these capabilities. It has taken them 10 years to establish themselves, right? This is talking about the exact same thing. And then you can see that the new World Trade Center that was rebuilt, even in that they have done a bunch of detailing and connection work, right? These are also like reference projects. What they're saying is that referenceability matters a lot here, experience matters a lot, and today they have crossed that threshold in the field of mechanical engineering, mainly automotive, BIW, body in white division, right? And they've talked about the fact that they had just started with 2D, but now they do 2D, 3D detailing, robotics, simulation, which remember the fact that today in automotive, a lot of robots are used for building the cars. So they would probably design the robot also, right? Is what they're talking about. And then, the end-to-end solution is what they're able to deliver for 3 to 4 years. All of this comes in capabilities under competitive advantages. Another reference project, right? Now they're talking about the fact that for Tesla, they have been working since 2018-19, and that has become a benchmark now in the EV field, right? And they have been valued well as an experienced design company here. And there are several EV projects, lithium ion battery plants coming up across Europe. Companies like FFT, where we are related with, are very active in the field of EV, right? So I guess these are important things to understand and sort of capture. So this was like mechanical, I mean civil reference projects, and then we can capture mechanical reference projects as well, right? And then they say that we have been working with FFT and VDL for last 3 to 5 years. Now they believe, they see the quality, and there's acceptability, and they're calling our people to the site as well, right? All of these are important drivers of the growth. So this is why we read concalls, so that we can capture things like these, details like these. I will i will just do a quick detour to Bard. What company is FFT that is into EV technologies? FFT company EV. I guess it could be a German company. That's what it looks like, probably. Friedenberg Filtration Technologies. Yeah, I guess this is something, I mean, basically, um, both of these are things worth highlighting. And then, offline, one can go deeper into this also. Who is FFT and VDL, right? These are important details to figure out. So he's talking about the fact, long story short, that there will be a 40 to 50% growth in EBITDA this year. This will come under profitability, guidance. It's important to capture these things, because this is how, when you listen to the Q2 con call, you'll then have a mental map of what he had guided for, and then are they actually meeting that guidance or not meeting that guidance. So I guess here it's important business details, the fact that they are sort of involved from the very beginning of the building, right from the foundation till the end of the main structure, the steel structure, right? So these are important business details. So I would put this under business details. The reason that it's important to understand these things is that essentially it tells you that there's a very close relationship. It's not like a vendor who's given a very abstracted out problem and you just take the delivery and then forget about the vendor. No, they are a partner, right? They would go to the site, do on-site inspections. Um, so yeah, that's important to understand. So now slowly, in this paragraph, he's highlighting the fact that why do they want to do an acquisition in structural designing and architecture, right? The fact that with this, they would then end up having sort of that forward integration through which they would then have a end-to-end responsibility of the project design, right? And essentially, this is the kind of capability that they want to acquire. So again, going into strategic intent, they talked about structural designing and architecture, and now we sort of understand why they wanted to do it. Relationship with general contractors who are at the top end of the civil spectrum would increase, right? So basically, they become even more indispensable to the civil contractors. And this is obviously a target for Moltec. And through a proper acquisition, they will be then doing end-to-end design. What they're saying is currently we are only doing 2D, 3D, and a little bit of connection design. So essentially, this is for expanding capabilities, right? This is essentially what they are saying. This is why they want to do the acquisition. And it shows you the management mindset and thinking about the terminal value becoming more end-to-end integrated, vertically integrated. Now, this is another important thing to understand. They have talked about why do they want to go down the inorganic route. This is again explaining the strategic intent. Ki why do inorganic, right? They've said because if we didn't do it, if we had built it organically, this designing and architectural services, it would take another 8 to 10 years, right? And that would be a very long gestation period. So why inorganic is also being answered very well here. So yeah, they are looking at 2 to 3 options, but they're particular about the proper fit, and they want the promoters to continue for 5 to 6 years, right? So these are also some insight into decision making criteria. Like what are they looking at for deciding who to acquire, right? So now they're saying that their relationship with FFT, VDL, or GE Stamp are improving. These clients are into automotive, not necessarily body in white, but interior, exterior, wire harnessing, stamp dies, right? So I think even in mechanical, what they are pointing out is that they want to increase the capabilities. And of course, all of that helps them move up the value chain, move into more value added services. Mechanical division, strategic intent, right? Okay. So, Prolin is asking some very good questions here. The first question he asks is that what is the demand landscape? Where is the demand coming from? So again, if you remember, like basically asking and understanding the drivers of the growth is extremely important. That's what Prolin is doing. So he's asking, is it residential, commercial, industrial? And then he's asking about the competitive landscape or competitive intensity, right? We have a section for that. He's asking ki, why are the Indian retailers even winning business? Is it because of cost? Is it something else? And then where does Moltech stand in that competitive landscape? Because probably there are many other Indian retailers also, right? So basically, what is the advantage that Moltech has versus the other peers? So I think very beautiful questions. He's from Goldfish, so I probably want to check him out later on. Then the next question, the third question he's asking is that in the press release, company has talked about moving into fixed team billing. What does that mean, and how does that impact our profitability margins? And what percentage comes from this segment compared to other skills like steel detailing, right? So he's clarified first the driver of growth, that most of the buildings are commercial and industrial, airports, stadia, multi-storied high-rise buildings. Sometimes it can be residential, but majority are commercial, warehouses, airports. That's telling you about the driver, growth driver. Segments of civil they are in. So he's talked about how they have climbed up the capability curve. They used to do 3 or 7 or 8 storied buildings, and now they are doing 60 storied buildings, huge warehouses of Amazon or airports or expansions of airports, right? They moved from the mom and pop kind of buildings to very high-end industrial and commercial buildings. Even industrial buildings, we provide structural detailing and connection design. So this is the core structure, and that's why it's very safety critical kind of design. So all of this would also come in growth journey. Right. So I think he's given some very good details about the fixative team assignments, because they're charging $3,000 to $3,500 per person, and they have that software, I support media, for the clients to sort of get a sense of how their resources are being utilized, and that all of this is 50% EBITDA margin, currently 10 to 12%, and they are aiming to grow it to 15 to 20%, right? So this is also exceedingly good details. All of this is talking about the driver of profitability, that how would the profitability go up. Yeah. These are very good insights. He's talking about the fact that if we come to civil, they want to move from low end designing to member design, right? He's talking about the fact that connection design is how do you connect the members, but the members itself is high end design, and that it has to be stamped by a PE. So it's clearly telling you that they are designing some lower value products right now, lower value uh, design services, and they want to go into the higher end of the design services, right? I think, to be honest, this is the nature of reality. This is both giving you details on profitability, and it's giving you details on barriers to entry, it's giving you details on the evolution of the company, it's giving you details on the strategic intent of the company. I am just putting it under strategic intent, but like it doesn't really even matter too much. But yeah, um, evolution in civil member design, right? Right. PE has to stamp. That's like the like some kind of barrier to entry, so to speak. Right. So you said that they have now onboarded these two people who are the PEs, who are going to stamp their drawings, and that will allow them to do member design. I guess one obvious question which comes up is how many PEs there are. And yeah, this is fascinating because every state board has its own PE clarification, licensing. So you have to pass the PE design for that state. So if there are 50 states, either you have to employ 50 people or you employ very senior people who have passed the exam of all the states. Very interesting. Uh, I was just looking at production engineer. How many production engineers are in USA who can stamp member designs in civil engineering projects? There are 8 lakh production engineers. And the growth is eye-popping. I mean, 7% growth is a very fast growth, right? And the growth will be driven by increasing demand for manufactured goods. So, I mean, even though this might look like a large number, it looks like this has to grow even faster given the amount of construction that they're doing. So see, this is the important thing to understand, right? This is why it is a strategic intent, but it's also impacting the profitability and the level of the revenue. They've talked about the fact that revenue from these kind of services is at least 100% higher than what they are charging right now. So connection design, steel detailing is X, then member design is like 2X, right? Currently we are not doing member design, we are doing member connection design. That itself is fetching them 50% EBITDA, right? So I would put this under, I think this would probably go under strategic intent. I mean, we can put it under profitability also, but yeah, let's just put it here. Because all of these are increasing the terminal value of the company. This is the most important part of it. This is the economic driver of the industry itself. Like, why is the industry working out? I guess we should create a section called industry tailwinds where this goes. So the point is, if you had a engineer in USA, you would pay $120 an hour. Um, isn't it better to pay $60 to $80 an hour to professional Indian engineers who are authorized and able to stamp it, right? That's what the company is saying. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's basically the economic driver for the entire outsourcing. This is where they're talking about the TAM, right? It's a little bit unclear what they are referring to. Are they referring to the entire TAM? Are they referring to member design? I don't know which one they are talking about, but it's clear that at least part of the services they provide can grow 10 to 100 times in the next few years, right? Let's also create a section on TAM. 10 to 100 times. So this is clearly telling you that basically it's a very large total addressable market for them, right? So the strategic intent and the business plan is acquisition of an established design firm, and through that they are sort of jumping two steps of the value chain, directly dealing with the general contractors who are the major decision makers and who can give right from architectural if they like, otherwise structural detailing and basically everything. Then they are also obviously saving cost. Makes sense. This is important part of it, that I think this should also go in strategic intent under acquisition. They want to go closer to the general contractor who are the major decision maker, or basically the if you look at why Asian Paints has succeeded, it's because they have managed to convince the painter to use their paint. And of course, after everybody starts seeing Asian Paints around, then it becomes a brand. Similar to that, APL Apollo convinced the person using the structural steel tubes to use their steel tubes. So it's about that local guy who knows, and you are able to influence them, right? I think one thing is very clear. This is like not a order book driven business, because order book is just like one quarter's revenue for them. I would put this in business details, not an order book driven business. Yeah, I think this guy is basically asking, how do you even get work? Do you get it from the subcontractor? Do you get it from the design engineer? And then are the repeat clientele primarily government, or is it companies like Amazon? So what he's saying is that their dealing is primarily only with private contractors, not with the government. In detailing, the major contact point is the fabricator. At present, they are almost at the bottom of the pyramid. Maybe the second step is connection design. That's what they are doing right now. And then basically they will start doing member design also. They have already hired two uh, production engineers. Right. Once we become a structural engineer and architect, we will be directly rubbing shoulders with general contractor who are the major decision makers, and then we can not only get the structural and architectural work from them, we can ourselves decide. We are the detailing company for them, and we can even charge them higher rates. So this is crucial stage of the company. If we take proper steps, things can be really good, right? This is where you can see the journey of like the going up the ladder of the value addition. But I think there's not much new information here, so I'm not adding anything from this. I guess what he's saying is that maybe 20 to 25% of the revenue in mechanical comes from power and utilities. So let's put this in business details. Right. Now they are entering stamping dies and tools and wire harness and looking at other areas of automobile, because contacts, I guess they are talking about clients, are well established with automobile. And with EV, there is going to be huge demand for automobile services in the next 3 to 5 years. Right. Again, I don't find much new information here, so just going on. Yeah. So I think this is also very important to understand. This is very important to understand industry growth drivers, industry tailwinds. So I think a lot of people were worried that there can be recession in the US, there can be um, inflation in the US. But one thing to understand and remember is the primary driver of the inflation is the kind of actions US government have taken, which is like Inflation Reduction Act, nearshoring and onshoring of services. All of that effectively means they will have to recreate those factories, those buildings in US. The point is, yes, there will be inflation, but this company will probably benefit from all that construction activity. Right. So I think he's primarily talked about like succession plans. Um, I guess we can have a management header, and there we should put all of this. So, succession planning. So what interesting thing he's saying is that access gates and KPIT are definitely at our level. I think he might just be overstating it a bit, because I was talking to some folks and they're saying that KPIT is into things like autonomous vehicle, ADAS, which is driver assistance service, self-driving kind of things, which obviously um, Moltec is not working on. But I guess what he means to say is they're closer to Access Kids and KPIT compared to Tech Mahindra and TCS. I guess he's also probably talking about size. And then he's saying that they are mostly in mechanical and aerospace, and they are more in engineering. I think this is important to understand that like this company is more into engineering and not like, I think they're not more like a software company, they're more like a engineering services company. Um, yeah, there's no listed company in our space of civil structural designing or detailing. Now, the interesting thing he says, and this is very important to highlight. So yeah, all of them are in mechanical, and then these guys are more in engineering. This comes in competitive intensity and basically competitor analysis. But the next thing he says is extremely important, and like we have to go deeper into it. He says that there is no listed company in our space of civil engineering. There are quite a few, five or six known detailing companies privately held, and one of them is as big as our team, maybe a little less. This is, this has to be looked into, because this is just classic competitor analysis. That is how you can figure out what is the probability of success. The way to think about it is, if this kind of detailing is largely unorganized, if the largest player here is Moltec, if the general trend is for these kind of services to shift from US to India, and if Moltec is already moving up the ladder, a few rungs of value addition up the ladder, all of those things point to the fact that there can be a very large growth advantage period, or they can grow for a long time. But all of that is obviously modulo the analysis of the competitors and verifying the claims that they are making. There's not much happening here. He's talking about the fact that last year was not good, things like that. Last year was too good and he was worried this year may not be good, but it's good. He's talked about the execution period uh, in the mechanical engineering division. This is a important business detail because it can impact the working capital, it can impact um, how long the revenues last. These are also, very important things. Like this is a strategic intent of, looking into. So the thing is, you are a mechanical services company, right? You really don't have any fixation on automotive. Automotive being one of the very large global industries, you have to be in automotive. But there are other things also they want to go into, like embedded electronics and special purpose machines, right? All of these are showing the strategic intent. Now, one thing I want to say is, see, when I'm reading the con call, I don't want to spend time on summarizing. But after reading all of this, I can always obviously cut it short and make it much more crisper. But I want to do that separately after reading the con call. So, this is the growth guidance, 55 to 60 crore of EBITDA. We'll add this in the profitability guidance thing. Right. So he's saying that, people that come from outside may not understand. We need some internal training. Let's add this in. Let's add this in business details. And then I guess you guys will have to give me a couple of. Let's get back. You're putting in place learning management system. Attrition is, I would say, relatively on the lower side because it's a niche skill. Very limited knowledge in simulation and robotics. Um, I guess these are also important business details. This is important. This is important to understand. Newly hired people in year one will not contribute much, meaning most of the growth they are doing right now is coming from people they hired 1 year ago, right? Which means there is significant operating leverage that is built into the system, where essentially, if you slow down your hiring today, your revenues can still grow fast while your expenses won't grow that fast. And of course, we all know that salary hikes don't happen at the same rate that your business will grow. So there's significant operating leverage, just like with any other ER&D type of company. I think this is a very important detail for profitability actually. He's talked about the fact that typically they want to acquire a company which is like 10 to 30 employees and 5 to 10 million type of sales bracket. Of course, that would be easier to ingest into the Moltech also. I think I want to add that here in strategic intent as a detail. They will use cash to acquire it. I mean, the cash they have in hand and probably internal accruals. They've talked about the fact that these relationships are very like geography specific. They will probably have to do multiple acquisitions in different parts of the USA. Now, Aman is asking, what does this 20,000 ton of order mean in terms of rupees? And then he's asking, is there a particular sub-segment like robotics where we have competitive advantage versus others? Because there are lots of players in India in the listed place space, probably in automotive, which is like KPIT, etc., who have a they're much more experienced than Moltech, right? He's saying that 20,000 ton is close to 1 million. That's the rupee conversion. They have done several in the past. I guess this is an important business detail. So you see, now they are talking about the competitive advantages. He's saying that in the niche area of electrical vehicle niche body in white, we are among the first, and we have even been compared to Tatas in some of the projects which we quote in Europe and Mexico. This is telling you about the competitive advantage and the general um, stack rank of these companies, uh, and basically how do they compare to each other. They're saying that Tata Technologies and Axis Kids, CSG Technologies, Axis Kids they don't know, but Onward is all competitors. Competitors in mechanical, Tata Technologies, right? So he has also already done a comparison for us. Bhagwan bless him, because now we don't have to look up these details. We know what are the relative sizes of these companies, and they are, I would say, right up there. Onward has 200 to 250 people. Onward might have other segments also, but at least in this part, which is BIW. And then they obviously did Tesla BIW in 2018-19. Um, let's add that in the competitive advantage part of it in mechanical reference projects. They did BIW for Tesla. Now he's asking that is BIW good enough to scale 5 to 10x? And they're saying no, it's not good enough, and we can't reach like 100 million or 50 million. Maximum they can go is like 10 to 15 million. But it's a important area. Fixer design, robotic design for the manufacturing lines. Google keeps asking me if I'm in the call. BIW can only be like 10 to 15 million kind of segment. That's also telling you a bit about the TAM. Where is the TAM? Then let's go here. And he's talking about the fact that by working with them in BIW, they will be able to penetrate into others like interiors, exteriors, aspects of design of the automobile, which they are not currently into. Right. This is important to estimate the TAM. He's saying that steel detailing is like 3% of the trillions of dollars. So steel detailing, just by the virtue of this, probably becomes like 60 to 100 billion dollar kind of an industry. Outsourced pie is less than 20%. Very niche area, and like it's a chicken and egg problem. Like you need experience to get hired, and then you won't get hired. Right. And then he's talked about the fact that, of course, cost advantage is important, but in addition, you also need to show your capabilities in designing and drafting and detailing complex structures involving configuration, geometrical configuration, and then you will be recognized as a reliable detailer. So all of this goes in competitive advantage. The reason all of this is important is that, unless you've done this kind of segmentation, how do you get a holistic picture of what is a competitive advantage and the competitive intensity for this company? That's why this is important. Okay, now he has finally told us that there are a lot of these steel detailing companies, but they are like the largest one. And then Proteus is a private company which is larger, or like as large as our company. Uh, Competitor analysis, and we have to look into this. Tofler is the Indian website where you can look up private companies. Right. And then Romania and Indonesia and Philippines are the other places where this detailing happens. Uh, Cost advantage India has is probably higher, and then most of the detailing is happening in USA at higher prices. So, yeah, the same drivers that you would expect in a in an industry like services are present in more tech. So he's talked about the fact that they're getting awards from trade organizations, and through those references and awards, they're able to get a good clip of client addition. I guess all of this points to competitive advantage, and we have to look for these things. Like what are these awards for, and how many people were evaluated, and things like that. But yeah, it's giving us a good starting point of how to dive deeper and understand like what awards are they getting, and how are they able to show proof of competence. Now he's saying the fact that market growth is sort of immaterial for them. But of course, if the market growth is good, then they get bigger projects at better price points. If the market is dampened, which is not the case today, they will have to struggle a bit, do more legwork to grab bigger projects. And they are saying that currently they are present more in tier 2 cities, not in tier 1 cities of US. Tier 1 maybe local huge companies who have established over. So basically, I guess what he's saying is that their main competitors in tier 1 are the US companies, which are probably giving it at a higher rate also. And like he said, if they can go in the direction of value addition through structural designing, then they can start probably competing there. General contractors, a direct contact with general contractors, and they decide these things, right? So now what Harshit is asking is that BIW is a large part of mechanical, and then from 3 to 4 year point of view, do we expect mechanical to be a larger uh, part of the pie given the tailwinds? And also, we have done some BIW work for Tesla. Um, are we also trying to do more work for Tesla? And the second part is that should we look at this business from a sequential perspective, or basically quarter on quarter, or year on year? So he has talked about the fact that there's some seasonality and the business cycle. He's repeating the same thing because the analyst didn't probably listen to it. Yeah, so he's talked about the fact that, see, I have strategic intent in both the segments. Probably mechanical can be larger, but I have intent to grow in civil also. I think this is like it's not showing anything to us, to be honest. Even the comment he's saying where it can be 30 to 40, I would not take that very seriously for the simple reason that civil is also growing. Yeah. Now he's talking about the margins, that basically earlier pre-COVID it used to be 20 to 25, now it's 30%. and he's saying that 30% can be improved because they'll get into higher value addition, like I think he said structural design, architectural, fixity or fixed team contracts where the EBITDA margin is 50%, things like that. Right. So he has again, talked about the fact that this is the guidance on both growth and profitability. I'll probably put it under growth because that's the key intent of what he's saying. He's saying that civil is growing at 20 to 25%, MES 30%, overall top line 25 to 30%, and then EBITDA can grow 35 to 40 because of better capacity utilization. Right, of course. Last year trainees will probably become the uh, employees who are productive this year, and this year trainees next year, and so forth. Right. Yeah, actually, this question of how many people, I mean, yeah, uh, I think we should add this in growth. So one thing I want to add is I already checked their EPFO. They have like 900, if I remember correctly, 900 employees, and um, they took in 115 last year. So all of that is just giving you a rough idea of the pace of hiring. But I mean, I think this is important to check and monitor from EPFO. But yeah, the exact numbers and things like that don't matter too much. The growth and the curve matter more. Funded through cash accruals, he already said it, and yeah, that finishes the con call. So yeah, I hope this helped. I will uh, I will stop presenting. um, Thank you everyone for watching this, and for the people who have watched till the end, I hope this was helpful to understand how to think about reading con calls. When I'm even if I'm listening to a con call, I'm not just watching it or thinking of it like a entertainment show where you just watch it without applying your brain. You're always thinking in terms of competitive intensity, competitive advantage, competitors, competitive analysis, growth, guidance, profitability, TAM, management, risk, and the different headers which I have created. So yeah, I'll urge all of you to share with me how you read con calls, and in case it helped you, please do let me know in the comments or by liking the video or whatever you prefer. Thank you so much.